Are rich celebrities, tech billionaires, members of the royal family and right-on celebrities guilty of eco-hypocrisy as they jet around the world lecturing us? And could their do as I say, not as I do behaviour undermine the cause of tackling climate change to which they claim to be signed up? These are questions posted by Paddy Hannam in his latest brilliant Spiked Online article, and he joins me now. Hi, Paddy.
Good evening, Mark.
Yes, of course, being labelled a hypocrite is something that is the ultimate wounding thing you can say about any celebrity.
Well, they brought it upon themselves, it has to be said. There's only so much that anyone can put up with being given a down-your-nose sort of message all the time. And then we go and see our most elite politicians and celebrities doing the exact opposite of what they preach. We've seen it on all kinds of issues throughout the lockdowns, for example, with people breaking their own social distancing rules. And now, of course, with the climate. So, yeah, they've really brought it upon themselves.
However, some of these tech billionaires and other celebrities would say that they are global leaders, that they are propagandists to focus collectively our minds on the issue of climate change, and that maybe their air miles are more valuable, more justified than ours. They've got to fly around to spread their message.
Well, I'm sure they do believe that. It would just be more effective for their message if they actually practiced what they preach. I mean, in my piece, I talk about Prince Harry, a great example of this, who talks all the time about climate change being one of the greatest threats that the world faces. He seems to be quite a miserable man now that he's left the UK, and so he's trying to make us all miserable about the climate. But not so long ago, he took a private jet across America to return from an event on the East Coast back to the West Coast. I think these sort of actions just send a message that the efforts that need to be made to tackle climate change need to be made by the little people, by the poor people, by the normal people in the world, and not by the people with all the wealth and power. And I'm not sure that's the most effective way to get a movement going.
No, and Paddy, we saw actually, not at the last election in America, but the previous presidential election, the one that Donald Trump surprisingly won against the odds, against Hillary Clinton. And at the time, it was argued that all of the wealthy celebrities supporting Hillary were actually helping Donald Trump's cause. Is it possible that these rather hypocritical celebrities could harm the battle against global warming, that they could prove to be the opposite of helpful when it comes to winning hearts and minds?
Absolutely. I mean, not all of these people are popular people. It's a bit like Tony Blair with any policy, for example, that he attaches himself to. It immediately becomes less popular. I think it's the same with people like Prince Harry. For a lot of people, it will be the same with the likes of Sadiq Khan. You know, these are people who are adding toxicity to any campaign that they're a part of. And when you add in the fact that they are such ridiculous, blatant hypocrites, they immediately do subtract from the cause that they're a part of. Now, as it happens, I think they also go way too far in the language that they use to talk about the threat of climate change. You know, climate change is real, it's serious, it's something we need to tackle. But these people who are some of the wealthiest and most powerful people in the world are promoting the kind of measures that would collapse growth in the developing world and make the lives of normal people, even in this country, much worse. And that is really going to damage any serious movement.
Yeah. And also, Paddy, I suspect there are parallels, Paddy, with the kind of do as I say, not as I do sort of approach in the COVID-19 pandemic, when Dominic Cummings went for his notorious trip to Barnard Castle, Matt Hancock snogging his girlfriend in a corridor. We've seen a lot of parallels in the course of the pandemic with COVID restrictions, again, ignored by the elites.
Absolutely. And I mean, we've seen this across the world. You know, Joe Biden going to the Barack Obama's party, nobody seemed to be wearing masks there, but you have to wear masks when you've had a vaccine in America. You know, all these sorts of things. It just gives the impression, and probably the correct impression, that the people making the rules assume that they won't have to live by the rules. They're making legislation for millions, tens of millions, even hundreds of millions of people in the case of the US government. And yet they are not living by those rules themselves. The least they could do is do that when the cameras are on, but they've not even managed to do that. They've not even managed to keep up appearances. That really does make you think that they're not serious about the threats that they're talking about, and they're using fear, whether it's fear about COVID or fear about climate change, to get people to do things that they themselves don't think even perhaps are that necessary.
Delighted to Paddy, bring my panel into this. Sam, Lembit and Francis. Lembit, you are a well-known national figure. Have you ever preached a message that you then ignored yourself?
Not deliberately. I think everybody's a hypocrite to some extent, but I hadn't deliberately set out to do it, not knowingly. And I absolutely agree with Paddy here. I don't mind if people make odd choices in their lives. What I really dislike, what really sticks in my throat, is when I'm being told that I'm supposed to use, let's say, digital conferencing, but Greta Thunberg can go all over the world because she doesn't have to use Zoom or FaceTime, whatever it happens to be. Second one here for you, the biggest hypocrisy of all in this country. We've got this thing called COP26. It's an environmental conference. Why are they flying thousands of people from all over the world into Glasgow when we could actually socially distance and avoid all of those millions of litres of fuel by making them do it digitally? Why? Oh, because it's more important that they all go to Glasgow. This is why people, I would like to think, begin to question the credibility of those who preach this new religion.
Are those flights into Glasgow not a drop in the ocean? And the purpose of the conference is to tackle climate change. So perhaps that's more justified than my trip to Marbella next summer.
OK, well then let's just say to everybody, do as we say, not as we do. If you become a politician, then you can go anywhere you want, but you're not allowed your 1 week off in Marbella. The great breakthrough in terms of civil liberties and a celebration of wealth was in the 1960s and 70s when package holidays became real. There's another, and therefore I just think that that's not very credible. There's another one. Here's the heresy coming up, folks. These people don't even understand climate science because climate science is not settled. Consensus is not science. And there's so much that's wrong about the claims that are being made, even about whether there's a climate crisis. I'll maybe restrict myself a bit on this. But you all see celebrities...
Don't restrict yourself, Lem.
Oh, now you're going to get it. Mount Milankovitch cycles. Do anybody in Hollywood even know what those are? That's how the Earth goes around the sun. That's a really big factor in climate, I believe. The Antarctic actually has increasing ice. There are more polar bears now than there were in the 1960s. None of this seems to be knowledge for the people who are preaching to us about the world. I'm very happy, and I'll say this live on GB News, to take anyone on in the studio, any celebrity, on any aspect of the climate agenda. And if you really mean what you say, sit here in this studio and talk to me about the science before you preach to me that I'm not allowed to fly around this world, but you're allowed to turn up anywhere you want in a private jet.
Well,
that's just a start.
Caroline, my producer, is now already booking that item, Lembit.
We look
forward to having that conversation. What do you think about Lembit's comments, Paddy?
I think he's absolutely right. I mean, I hinted there at the point that the way that this sort of climate science, in inverted commas, is being thrown around by politicians, celebrities, influencers, all kinds of people. And it is, I know the term gets overused, but it is a kind of virtue signalling thing that they're doing, because as we know, they don't actually abide by the things that they're saying. And if they really thought that they were true and that everybody needed to make drastic reductions in their carbon output to save the planet, and that the planet is going to collapse and burn in 30 years if they don't do that, then surely they would be doing it themselves. Or maybe they think they won't be alive in 30 years and they don't care about the consequences. Either way, it's not a great reflection on those people. So absolutely, I think that, and this also gets onto the point of the fact that few of these people, they will pontificate about the climate crisis as they see it. But how many of them are actually prepared to sit down and have an honest debate about the status of the climate, whether the climate is drastically worse than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whether the world is going to burn in 10 years? Are they really prepared to have that debate? I don't think so.
Sam?
I personally think that there's so much self-righteousness within politics that I don't even want to get into it, because the hypocrisy is just, there's so much of it. When Greta Thunberg decided to, make people get her a boat so she could go across that to fly people across. And this sort of stuff is just, I'd like to know when the turning point was 10, 12 years ago or before. I'd like to know what you think, Paddy. Like, when was this turning point, this self-righteousness sort of became mainstream and all politicians took it up? Or do you think it's always been like that?
Well, there's always been a level of it, but I think it is accelerated in the kind of social media age. I mean, I don't necessarily think the rise of social media is in and of itself automatically a problem. But we are in this situation now where literally just posting a picture of yourself with an electric car or whatever it might be seems to be enough for a politician to show that they are committed to the green agenda, whatever it might be. They don't actually have to abide by those principles in their lives. So I think that certainly has something to do with it. But the kind of craziness of modern environmentalism, I think, has really accelerated in the last few decades. We had a kind of panic in the 90s, early noughties. Things went a bit quiet, and now in the UK, it's gone completely crazy with Extinction Rebellion again. So I think there's a lot of different trends that go into this, depending on which particular manifestation it has. But also, there is just an extent to which, the elites these days are more distant from the public than they've ever been, and more arrogant and more refusing to listen to the public, perhaps, than they've ever been. And that's certainly playing into it.
Yeah, I hear you, Paddy, but Francis, isn't some of this a bit sort of petty and small-minded? I mean, we're talking especially in the context of government ministers, of people whose job it is to run the country, to engage with, their counterparts abroad. Are we really expecting the Prime Minister to go round in a kind of charged-up milk float just to please journalists?
I think that's the very least he can do after the pandemic he's had, Mark. I'm going to be honest with you. The question, actually, Mark, that I wanted to ask Paddy is this. Paddy, you can't move now. You can't go on social media without having all these celebrities just, essentially talking at you consistently and constantly about how you should think, the causes you should support. Behind you, you've got a banner for The Who, one of the great classic English rock bands. When are we just going to go back to a time where we had rock bands and celebrities behaving badly, doing things we'd all love to do, but don't have the money, the time or the energy? When are we going to get back to that time when celebrities were actually interesting and producing great art?
Well, I hate to break it to you, Francis, but I think those days are gone.
Thanks, mate.
You said it's a band for The Who. The Who were a big band before I was even born. I'm 24 now, and it seems like it's not even a distant memory for me. I wasn't even alive. So it's that long ago. I hope that I'm wrong and that something will change. But I think these things have to be bottomed up. There's got to be some sort of public rejection of these movements. I'm hoping that is beginning to arise. We've seen polls coming out today showing that pretty much in every age group, everyone hates Extinction Rebellion, for example. But I hope that discussions like these will inspire people to be more honest and frank about their utter revulsion for the elites that govern us.
Well,
then we might have a few more Roger Daltrys amongst us.
Well, exactly. Love Roger Daltrey. What a legend. One of the great rock vocalists of all time. And I must say, in the context of the pandemic, very heartened when Eric Clapton, Van Morrison and Noel Gallagher spoke out about COVID measures. They've obviously, made a few enemies as a result, but good luck to them. They are rockers after all, and they're answerable to no one. So are you a big Who fan, Paddy?
I am, yeah. I am into The Who. Any of the sort of classic English rock bands. I know this probably looks. People will think this is a stereotypical GBNews guest's background. But
yeah, I thought you were just trying to butter us up.
Not at all. I was already there before I knew I was going to come on. Well, there you go. It fits.
So which band has made a greater contribution to post-war popular music, The Who or ABBA?
I thought you were going to say The Who or the Rolling Stones, and I was actually going to have to think there. So,
that's a harder
I think you can tell by my reaction which one I think has made the most important contribution. That said, I enjoy ABBA's music. They're a lot of fun, but I wouldn't take them quite as seriously as maybe we should.
Should I just say one more thing? One of the best songs ever written by The Who is called Won't Get Fooled Again. And what's happening with this climate debate at the moment is people are being fooled again. A report came out by a friend of mine called Howard Cox from Fairfield UK about the fallacy of electric vehicles challenging the science. Instead of people challenging what he was saying, they played the man. Why is this happening? And Paddy, do you have any optimism at all that things will turn back to real science instead of ad hominem attacks to those people who don't worship the altar of climate emergency?
Well, it's a depressing situation. I mean, you mentioned the song Won't Get Fooled Again. That also has the line, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. There's a lot of that going on at the moment where elites sort of morph into new new forms, whether it's the green kind or the identitarian kind or whatever it might be, but it's the same people basically that are maintaining all the power. When it comes to science, again, it's very difficult to break through because science is obviously dominated rightly by scientists, and but a certain group of scientists are coming to completely dominate our understanding, or not our understanding, but these people's understanding of the science, the way that the science is used. We've seen that with COVID, we've seen that with climate change, we've seen it with all sorts of things. I'm not hugely optimistic at the moment, but I do feel that more and more people, as these things come to affect our lives more and more, whether it's through lockdowns or whether it's through, the enforcement of strict kind of climate austerity, eventually there will come a point where people will start saying this surely is not what the experts think is right. And people will realize that actually this is a minority view that is being forced on us by a quite hysterical group.
It's a really interesting piece in Spiked Online. I'd recommend people take a look. Paddy, thanks very much for joining us. I'm going to walk home now to avoid hypocrisy. And when I get home, I'm going to listen to Live from Leeds, which is one of the all-time great live rock music albums by, of course, The Who.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.